Okay, to state my video's point right off the bat to avoid accusations of clickbait, the Goblins and Goblin Slayer are human, a breed of human, or a strange subspecies of human, because they can create fertile offspring with humans, something that isn't possible between two different species in reality. If you just clicked this video to see what the hell I was on about, then there you go. Right off the bat, I understand that Goblin Slayer is a fantasy setting with magic, and that real-world logic doesn't necessarily apply. However, I enjoy overanalyzing media because it gives me a new perspective on something I like, or allows me to form a new appreciation for it. If you can't get behind that idea, or the thesis of this video, then this just isn't for you. Though, I'd still recommend giving it a try, but that's just me. It's not something that's meant to be taken too seriously. For everyone who is still with me, hello. My name is Boofire191, and I just want to say, Goblin Slayer is pretty rad. It has some issues, if I'm being frank, chief among them being the CG on Goblin Slayer. Sometimes he looks amazing, and I'm pretty sure he's drawn, and then other times, often when it doesn't make sense, he looks really bad. It's a bit jarring, but it doesn't take away from that intense feeling of, oh fuck yeah, when he goes all Doom guy on a bunch of greenskins. Beyond that, 4 episodes actually in, the world itself is equally unique, but generic as hell. It's an odd combination that has piqued my interest enough that I want to learn more. The show's world building is interesting for what little we've gotten so far. A prime instance is that one segment, which got the internet fired up for a hot minute. Personally, I didn't think it was as bad as everyone made it out to be, and that those claiming it was done for titillation, well, let's just say I don't agree with them. Considering the fact that segment sparked a debate, and has led to the core idea of this video, suggests that there's more to it than just an edgy attempt at being shocking. But that's really as far as I'm gonna go down that train of thought. So, goblin rape and goblins being human. Let's get on to that. Throughout fantasy and science fiction, we often see sapient beings, for this instance a human and an elf, create offspring. As consumers of media, we rarely bat an eyelash at this. It just makes sense. Two people had sex, out came a child. Later on in life, this child, now fully grown, can have sex with another person in order to create an offspring. In our minds, this tends to make sense for reasons that I can't exactly nail down. We know that, as humans, if we screw an animal, it will most likely not produce an offspring, with the possible exception of some type of ape, maybe, because we are so different. That same concept applies to other sapient beings. If we screw an elf, unless we share a close common ancestor, or magic's involved, like the horse and donkey, then nothing is going to pop out. This extends to sci-fi, and in fact leads to all sorts of confusion considering the fact that that other species is a literal alien life form. I can't exactly explain why this is the case because I'm not a biologist, but most species that have sex with a different species won't produce an offspring. With that said, subspecies are known to be able to have sex with one another and create an offspring, as witnessed with horses and donkeys when they create mules, or a tiger and lion creating a liger. With that said, because of the nature of sex cells, when this rather unnatural pairing occurs, the offspring will be sterile. To simplify a complicated idea with something I understand, imagine a 2mm stereo cable being shoved into a 3.5mm stereo cable hole. Sure, it technically fits, but it doesn't belong there. Genetic information that is exchanged in the sex cells goes to places where they don't belong, leading to complications like one being sterile. For instance, a donkey has 62 chromosomes where a horse has 64. When they mate, some information may get lost or go places that it shouldn't. Again, trying to make this as simple as possible and not get hung up on it. The main takeaway is this: because two similar but different species had sex, their offspring, if they have one, will be sterile because sex is a complicated process that becomes even more complicated with extra variables. Now, let's get back to the rapey little bastards known as goblins. As Goblin Slayer states in its first episode, goblins capture women and rape them in order to create more goblins. Considering the fact that goblins have been around for at least a generation when we factor in Goblin Slayer's backstory, as well as consider there are myths centered around the origin of the goblins, we can assume that these greenskins have been around for some time. This means that they are, in fact, producing fertile offspring. Otherwise, they would have died out a long time ago. Factoring in what we've already learned, if goblins and humans didn't have a common ancestor like the donkey or horse, then it would be insanely unlikely that they could have any offspring at all, let alone just have goblins. If goblins were a subspecies of humanity, then they may be able to make weird urukai-looking hybrids based off of the precedents of reality, or rather a hybrid that has traits from both the biological mother and biological father. Keeping that in mind, if they did in fact create a hybrid, then said hybrid would most likely be infertile due to the complications that comes with such a pairing. So, when we add in the fact that goblin rape, oh god, can't believe I'm doing this, does in fact lead to fertile offspring consistently, we have to throw out the idea that goblins are a subspecies of humans. Real quick, I want to state that female mules can sometimes be fertile, however, these are rare instances and are thanks to the eggs that just contain the mother's DNA. It's very rare and is the exception, not the rule. We factored out that goblins are a subspecies of humans due to the fact they consistently make fertile offspring. So that begs the question, what the hell are goblins in relation to humans? Again, ignoring the fact that magic exists because that takes all of the fun out of this. So, we've ruled out subspecies, for the most part, which I'll get back to, which leaves us with only one real option. Goblins are human, or to put it more accurately, they are a breed of human. A German Shepherd and a Dachshund are two very different types of dogs. However, in spite of that, they are in fact the same species, and when one of both of these breeds mate, they produce this adorable little son of a bitch. This adorable son of a bitch is a hybrid of two breeds of dog. However, the species of these two breeds was the same, which means the pupper can have other puppers when it grows up. A breed is an alteration of a species which hasn't diverged enough to be classified as something new, and can produce fertile offspring with the species at large. What we see with goblins is, again, the fact that they can produce fertile offspring with humans. They may look different like the Dachshund and German Shepherd, but in the end, they can create fertile offspring, which means goblins are in fact just a breed of human, or humans are a breed of goblin. Boom. Case closed. Faultless logic, except for the fact that a human-goblin pairing only creates goblins. This is why I brought up earlier that I get back to the subspecies aspect of this conclusion. There is no logical way to explain why a pairing of species X and Y only leads to offspring that are species X. They're not even hermaphrodites, where they can literally fuck themselves like tapeworms to reproduce. So, within the confines of real-world logic, I've got no answer as to how or why the DNA of goblins can dominate that of a human being during reproduction. I watched episode 4 right after writing most of this, and I've come to realize that these little bastards can also reproduce with elves as well as dwarves, which completely throws everything out the window. But I still don't want to explain it with simply because magic. So guess what, boyos? I've got a little bit more for you. In episode 3 of Goblin Slayer, the priestess, whose name I have still yet to remember, states that when someone makes a mistake, a goblin is formed. Goblin Slayer himself states that they are from the Green Moon and are tied to jealousy and envy. I bring this up to compare it with other stories that relate to the subject matter across other works of fantasy. In Dragon Age, the Darkspawn, orc-looking creatures, kidnap women, corrupt them, and then turn them into broodmothers, where they pump out more Darkspawn. In Lord of the Rings, the evil Valar Melkor kidnapped elves and turned them into twisted beings, which became the first orcs. Orc reproduction in Lord of the Rings really isn't touched on, but what little information there is, it isn't pretty. The idea that Dragon Age and Lord of the Rings have core to their lore is that orcs, or Darkspawn, are corrupted forms of the free peoples of that world. In Goblin Slayer, when the priestess says that goblins are formed when someone makes a mistake, she may be alluding to a past that is now buried in myth. Also, Goblin Slayer himself may be alluding to what exactly got them corrupted in the first place, that being jealousy and envy. From what little I understand about Goblin Slayer's setting, having only watched the anime recently, I've gathered that this world has a good and evil god, more or less. I'm not gonna go into like light novel territory. Going off the precedent set by previous works of fantasy, the goblins of Goblin Slayer may have at one point been humans who were corrupted and or twisted by the evil god. Because of this, and the lingering aspects of the goblins that are still human, goblins have the ability to mate with whatever species humans could mate with, and consistently create fertile offspring. To summarize that, goblins are a subspecies of humans because they used to be humans before being corrupted and twisted long ago. I say humans are the origin of this corruption specifically because goblins appear to be the most populous monster species in the setting, whereas humans appear to be the most populous, quote-unquote, good species. Alright guys, that's all I've got for you. I hope you've enjoyed this. Please, again, bear in mind, don't take this too seriously, just having some over-analytical fun. I've been Boofar191. See you all later. Goodbye.